Moltes gràcies, bona tarda. Es curioso que escuchar el himno europeo cada vez emociona más. Es más emocionante escucharlo hoy que hace 6 meses o que hace un año. Yo creo que nuestro sentimiento de pertenencia a la Unión se va fortificando con el paso del tiempo. Estoy seguro que actos como el de hoy contribuirán a ese proceso. En todo caso, bienvenidos al Palau Macaya para esta sesión organizada por el Consulado General de la República de Polonia. Quiero saludar al honorable cónsul general, al honorable representante de la Comisión Europea, a los ponentes, la moderadora, a los asistentes, a todos ustedes, a darles la bienvenida y las gracias por estar presentes hoy aquí. Para el Club de Roma y la Fundación La Caixa es un honor colaborar con esta sesión. Es una tradición que empezaron sus otros colegas del Consulado de Bélgica el año pasado y que nos honra mucho que la República de Polonia ha querido seguir con la tradición. Confiamos que Dinamarca seguirá sus pasos y confiamos que cuando Dinamarca organice algo el próximo semestre, Groenlandia siga perteneciendo al Reino de Dinamarca. Confiamos que sea así, pero en todo caso será realmente un honor continuar la tradición y nos sentimos muy honrados de que hoy nuestros hermanos polacos nos honren con su presencia. Ustedes saben, señora cónsul general, que en este país, en Cataluña en particular, tenemos una proximidad importante con Polonia, histórica, atávica casi, y la teníamos incluso antes de que nosotros mismos fuéramos bautizados como polacos. Esto es relativamente reciente, los catalanes somos polacos hace 4 días. Hace 50 años o 30 años ya queríamos a Polonia y todavía no compartíamos la denominación. Entonces, perdónenme la pequeña broma, pero usted sabe, esta es la historia, funciona como funciona, pero en los sentimientos, el état d'esprit, ¿no? de los ciudadanos de España en general y de Cataluña en particular, Polonia es un país al que tenemos mucho cariño y que nos sentimos próximos y del que aprendemos. Yo recuerdo que hace unos años, debe hacer pues como 20 años, era director de recursos humanos en la Caixa, en el banco de la época, en la institución bancaria Caixa, y teníamos empleados de diferentes procedencias y había un chico polaco. Entonces, hablando un día, dando la bienvenida, etcétera, y hablaba, estoy encantado de tener un compañero de Europa del Este. Entonces me aclaró muy firme y muy educadamente que Polonia no forma parte de Europa del Este, que Polonia es de Europa Central. Digo, está muy bien, que es estupendo que los empleados te enseñen cosas y que además tengan digamos, la naturalidad y la claridad de expresarlo, porque durante mucho tiempo situábamos a Polonia en la Europa del Este, como alguno de ustedes quizá recuerde. Por eso el título de la conferencia de hoy, Liderazgo desde el corazón de Europa, me parece especialmente acertado y especialmente oportuno. Hombre, lo sospecho es que cuando tuvieron la iniciativa de organizar o de plantear la organización de esta sesión hoy en el Palau Macaya, lo que imaginaban que sería la presidencia polaca del semestre, la imaginaban menos compleja de lo que era el resultado. O sea, no tenían previsto, me imagino, la separación americana, por decirlo de alguna manera. Que es curioso, no sé si a ustedes ocurre, pero yo me siento como si alguien que ha ido muchos años con la misma pareja, bueno, yo llevo 57 con la mía, la de verdad, digamos. O sea, que sé lo que es una pareja estable y larga. Pero después de muchos años la pareja se separa. Y se separa además con cierto rencor, que es algo que me sorprende. O sea, cómo hoy Estados Unidos manifiesta o parece manifestar algún resentimiento hacia Europa, aunque también mi impresión, y esto es muy subjetivo, y hay expertos en la sala que seguro que saben más de ello, que la posición del presidente y la vicepresidente no son idénticas. En el presidente yo creo que hay algo de teatro, o sea, finge un poco el enfado, pero no está tan enfadado, ni cree de verdad que Europa se haya creado para tomarles el pelo a los americanos. Hombre, no se lo cree de verdad, o sea, es una posición, digamos, dialéctica. Y en cambio me preocupa más que el vicepresidente sí parece muy enfadado con nosotros. Yo no sé qué le hemos hecho a este buen señor, pero bueno, está muy enfadado. Pues es algo que no podíamos prever hace un tiempo y que intuyo que nos ha facilitado la presidencia polaca de la Unión durante este semestre. Pero en cualquier caso, tienen, como estaría muy bien, el apoyo de todos sus socios y todo el apoyo fraternal de todos sus socios en la Unión, y estamos encantados de colaborar y seguir fortaleciendo este proyecto de paz, de progreso que inventamos en Europa hace unos cuantos años y que nos hace definir orgullosamente como nosotros los europeos. En todo caso, muchas gracias. Agradezco nuevamente su presencia y deseo que sea una sesión tan fructífera como promete. Gracias.
Benvolgut president de la Fundació La Caixa, benvolgut director de la representació de la Comissió Europea a Barcelona, distinguits autoritats, honorables representants del cos consular, senyores i senyors, distinguits convidats. És un plaer donar-vos la més cordial benvinguda a aquesta conferència en el marc de la presidència polonesa al Consell de la Unió Europea titulada Lideratge des del cor d'Europa, la futura ampliació de la Unió Europea. Abans de començar, aprofito per agrair al president Jaume Lanaspa i tot el seu equip de la Fundació La Caixa Palau Macaya la seva excel·lent col·laboració en aquest projecte. Vull expressar el meu agraïment per la seva amable acollida en aquest preciós espai de Palau Macaya, el seu suport i la valuosa cooperació per dur a terme el projecte. També m'agradaria donar les gràcies per la seva col·laboració al Club de Roma, el CIDOB, el Barcelona Centre for International Affairs, la representació de la Comissió Europea a Barcelona i el Center for Eastern Studies. Per descomptat, agradeixo al professor Adam Holesch, al senyor Tadeusz Iwański per acceptar la nostra invitació i a la senyora Carmen Claudín de CIDOB per moderar la conferencia y por aceptar también la invitación. Muchísimas gracias. Polonia asumió la presidencia del Consejo de la Unión Europea en un momento de incertidumbre y preocupación. Europa se enfrenta a las consecuencias de la agresión armada de Rusia contra Ucrania y la necesidad de reforzar su propia capacidad de defensa. Para Europa, este es un momento de prueba y decisión. La Unión Europea debe protegerse a sí misma y a sus ciudadanos y cuidar de su velocidad directa. Debe ofrecer a los europeos una sensación de seguridad y perspectivas de desarrollo. La responsabilidad hacia las generaciones futuras requiere la unidad de la Unión Europea y voluntad de trabajar con socios que comparten nuestros valores, en particular los aspirantes a miembros. Además, nos obliga a defender los valores en los que se basa la comunidad, como la democracia, la libertad y el Estado de Derecho. Las relaciones con los Estados Unidos son muy importantes para Polonia y apoyaremos activamente el fortalecimiento de las relaciones transatlánticas. La presidencia polaca apoyará las actividades que refuercen la seguridad europea en todas sus dimensiones: exterior, es decir, defensa y seguridad; interior, protección de las personas y las fronteras; de la información, resistencia a la injerencia extranjera y la desinformación; económica, energética, alimentaria y sanitaria. Estamos decididos a continuar con el apoyo integral a la Unión Europea a Ucrania, que se está defendiendo de la agresión rusa. Seguiremos abogando por la ayuda de la Unión Europea para Ucrania, así como por la participación de la Unión Europea en la reconstrucción de Ucrania. Europa no puede estar segura sin una vecindad estable. La adhesión de nuevos Estados miembros que comparten los valores de la Unión Europea es un imperativo geopolítico y una inversión en el futuro y el crecimiento de la Unión. Nos esforzaremos para mantener el impulso del proceso de ampliación. Durante la presidencia, Polonia se ocupará del ritmo y la calidad del proceso de ampliación de la Unión Europea hacia el este y el sur. Nuestro objetivo es avanzar con respeto a Ucrania y Moldova, así como con los países de los Balcanes occidentales. Los avances en el proceso de adhesión deben ser proporcionales al compromiso de los países candidatos con la Unión Europea. Además, la presidencia polaca apoyará las aspiraciones proeuropeas de la sociedad georgiana. También queremos que la Unión Europea y Turquía den pasos concretos hacia el acercamiento. Turquía es nuestro socio estratégico muy importante, no solo en términos de seguridad, sino también en términos de economía. Hasta finales de junio, Polonia gestionará procesos importantes para la Unión Europea y sus Estados miembros. Mediará en las negociaciones y buscará los compromisos necesarios. Todo ello en un momento en el que se están decidiendo cuestiones clave para toda Europa. Bajo el lema Seguridad Europa, la presidencia apoyará las actividades que refuercen la seguridad europea. Muchísimas gracias y le cedo la palabra al señor Manuel Shapiro, director de la representación de la Comisión de la Unión Europea en Barcelona.
President, cònsol general, ponents, autoritats, amics, bon vespre. De entrada, me gustaría felicitarte, Ilona, y a tu equipo también por esta conferencia en el marco de la presidencia polaca del Consejo de la Unión Europea. Gracias también a la Fundación La Caixa, al Club de Roma, al Center of Eastern Studies, al CIDOB i altres per organitzar o ajudar a organitzar aquesta trobada i també per convidar-nos la Comissió Europea y convidarme especialmente a hacer la benvinguda. No me alargaré, tengo un minuto, tal vez un minuto y medio, porque lo que nos interesa sobre todo es escuchar unos grandes expertos del tema de la ampliación, Adam Holesch y Tadeusz Iwański, y la moderadora también, Carmen Claudín. La ampliación de la UE es más que nunca una inversión estratégica de largo recorrido en la paz, en la estabilidad y en la seguridad de todo nuestro continente. También es un ejercicio de solidaridad. Tal y como la presidenta de la Comisión Europea, Ursula von der Leyen, lo pone en sus prioridades políticas, es nuestro imperativo moral, político y geoestratégico para completar nuestra unión. Supone un trabajo sin descanso para que tanto la Unión, de hecho, como los países candidatos estemos listos. Sin descanso, pero superable. Sin descanso, pero creíble. Sin descanso, pero laudable. Y especialmente en el caso de Ucrania, que está llevando a cabo unas reformas impresionantes a pesar de una guerra en su territorio. Y desde la Comisión Europea seguiremos apoyando a nivel político, a nivel técnico, a nivel financiero, los países candidatos a la ampliación para que puedan avanzar en las reformas claves. Mientras tanto, hemos puesto en marcha, como sabéis seguramente, unos nuevos instrumentos como el plan de crecimiento para los Balcanes occidentales, la facilidad para Ucrania, el plan de crecimiento para Moldavia y muchos más, para permitir, entre otras cosas, una integración gradual de nuestros socios y así ofrecer ya unos beneficios tangibles debidos a la apertura de ciertas áreas del mercado único y de nuestros programas europeos. Sin más, os dejo con los expertos del tema, que os hablarán mucho mejor que yo del tema estratégico de la ampliación. Muchísimas gracias.
Good evening, buena tarde. Hoy tenemos con nosotros grandes especialistas. Profesor Adam Holesch, investigador en el Institut Barcelona de Estudios Internacionals, IBEI, y profesor asociado en la Universitat Pompeu Fabra. También el señor Tadeusz Iwański, jefe del Departamento de Belarús, Ucrania y Moldavia, del think tank polaco Centro de Estudios del Este. Y la discusión será moderada por la señora Carmen Claudín, Associate Senior Researcher del CILOP, Barcelona Centre for International Affairs.
Buona tarde a todos, dear consuls, dear president, dear director, dear assistants, dear students, thank you for showing up. Today's talk we will have divided into two parts. So I will talk first about the presidency, the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, and some of the challenges which they have, the priorities and also the challenges. And then Mr. Iwański will talk about the enlargement part. Okay, I would like to start to make it a little bit interesting, also with some developments which happened before the American elections. Now, in that moment, the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk wrote a tweet saying, "Maybe my wife said maybe one Donald is enough." Okay, so it was a way to say, okay, there will be another Donald coming. And right now we have a very particular situation. So we have, as the President of the United States, Donald Trump. We have, as the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk. And we have Elon Musk, who is everywhere about the news. And there is some kind of coincidence, right, of names. And why is this important? Because as we see right now, the American administration has some kind of a new diplomacy, okay? A new, very loud diplomacy. And here today we will talk about the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, which is based more on a quiet diplomacy, okay? So this is very important. And dear President, you mentioned already a lot of stuff which I wanted to mention in my talk, so I will try not to repeat myself, right? However, I will try to explain a little bit first what this presidency is, what it means for Poland, right? Why Poland is the relevant player right now. Then also the motto of the presidency, which is Security Europe, okay? And then also the challenges, right? How this how this security is reflected in the Polish priorities. So when we talk about the presidency, we have to look at the institution. No? So the Council of the European Union is the small council. No? It's the level of the ministers. It's not the European Council, which we can see every 3 months when they usually meet in Brussels. We see the heads of states, the prime ministers, presidents, right? This is all over the media. Now the Council of the European Union is the smaller council. However, this is also relevant. What does it mean for Poland right now? Poland took over from Hungary. Okay? The Hungarian presidency was some kind controversial. For example, the Hungarian presidency started with Viktor Orban traveling to most of the states involved of the war, trying to get some peace process done, right? However, and in this moment, the European leaders were not so very happy. They said, okay, maybe you don't have the mandate for that. On the other hand, the Hungarian presidency was very effective. When we look, for example, on competitiveness, on some of the economic issues, the Hungarians got something done, right? And this is sometimes not mentioned. The Poles took over in a moment when there was a lot of talk, Donald Trump, Americans, right? Everything what had to do with this new presidency in America. Why is this important? Because questions of security have shown up in Europe at least since February 22. Depends where you are based. If you are based in Poland, if you are based in Spain, right? You can somehow ignore some of the news, but the question of security is there. And I would like to emphasize that also because we live in Barcelona, we are in Spain, which have, right now this is something very beneficent, right, to be so far away from the war. And this will be very relevant in the future. No? Because even if the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it did impact the European Union a lot. No? It made European states coming together, right? It was a push for European integration at the beginning. However, we didn't see so many initiatives later. Now we needed the win of Donald Trump in the United States and also the insistence of the new American administration that Europe takes care of its own security, right, to get another push. And right now we are in this moment, and this moment is very important. Okay, so we had 2 shocks. First, the full-scale invasion, and right now, finally, as you mentioned in your intervention, after so many years, America seems to give up most of his soft power in the world, and says, Europe, please take care of your own security. And here we have different reactions in the European Union. Some countries, like Poland, took it already serious some years ago, right? Also due to the closeness to Russia, right? There is a common border in the north. Some countries didn't take it so serious. And usually it has also to do with distance. The far away from Russia, then the question of security are not so important. And here, therefore, also the presidency is so important. And let's remember again, the motto of the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union is Security Europe. Let's think about it. Let's start. Let's somehow engage with this topic. And I don't know if you're aware, but yesterday, for example, Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, suggested that every European should have a survival kit for the European Union, in case of war. And then this is something like a call, okay, maybe you should take it serious. Maybe there will be some events in the future, right, which change your kind of thinking. So we are 100% sure, this is 100% sure in a new moment, this moment of security. So how was Poland reacting to that? So Poland already in the past, also due to the insistence of Donald Trump during the first administration, I think we all can agree that the first period of when Donald Trump was in power was somehow complicated, but he really insisted on this 2% of GDP for NATO partners, right? Poland complied, other countries didn't comply with that. Right now, we are back in this moment. No? Right now, the new talks are about 3% or even more. Poland also, what Poland did in the past, and this was this famous Cassandra, repeating these calls, that there may be a regression from side of Russia, right? We have seen it, the beginnings of Vladimir Putin have been quiet at the beginning of the 2000s, but at least since 2008 in Georgia, we knew that this is very aggressive politics. Then we have 2014, the first invasion of Ukraine, and right now we have the full-scale invasion, right? And here, I think this is also the goal a little bit of the Polish presidency, to make Europeans aware that there could be a next step. Sure, we don't know what will happen next. No? Maybe this will stop here, maybe not. No? But the idea is that we should somehow invest in ourselves, but we should invest in the European Union. No? And therefore, security, when we look at the challenges and also the priorities of the Polish presidency, no, is flows in many other aspects. No? For example, one very important aspect is the aspect of democracy. Okay, democracy and European Union values. Okay, this is very interesting, no? Because Poland, in the past, the other government was also considered somehow, let's say at least populist, no? But right now, with this new government, it insists in the protection of rule of law. No? Rule of law in the European Union right now is very important. But also it talks about the protection of European values. And how can we protect the European values? For example, when we look at the Russian influence, these information companies, for example, everything what is going on in social media, right? Some kind of fake news which influence European politics and lead to very strange electoral results. For example, what happened in Romania in the past. Okay, so we see here the Russian influence, and we really have to be aware of this, right? Times are changing very fast. Social media is becoming every time more important. So the warnings that Russia could do maybe a little bit more than we expect is the one side. The other side is, even right now, when Donald Trump is president, Poland really insists on maintaining the transnational agenda. Okay, the transatlantic bonds, right? Poland really insists that they shouldn't be given up, even if some other member states, right, are very critical. Okay, this is a very relevant thing. Poland has a traditionally very strong bond with the United States, and this will be not given up. This is a consensus. This is a political consensus there. Another thing which is important are aspects of competitiveness. Now, there is this famous saying, everyone right now, United States innovates, China copies, European Union regulates. And even, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago, the European Union was very proud of regulation, of its trade policy, of competitiveness. Right? There were books about the Brussels effect from Professor Bradford. Now, the Brussels effect means that other states copy our competitiveness policies. Right? But everyone wants to be like the European Union. This changed a little bit, right? Therefore, one of the aspects which are relevant for the Polish presidency right now is deregulate a little bit Europe. Not too much, but make it easier for business, right, to move forward in the European Union. Why this is important? No, because Donald Tusk said it even in one of his interventions. The European strength is built on this economic strength from the past, right? Mostly after the Second World War. And we should be there again, right? We need the economically strong Europe also, because if we have to provide for our own security, we need the money for that, right? One idea is common debt, right? This is the Draghi idea. Another idea would be, right, that economies are strong again. And the last one which I would like to mention is this topic which is a little bit not so in the news anymore. And this is the topic of climate change. Okay? Before the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 2022, everyone's talking about climate change, which somehow disappeared, right? Nobody cares anymore. Also, well, because security is so present. What is the Polish idea here for the presidency? The idea is not so much to take it down. The idea is to make it more business-friendly first, okay? But we have more enthusiasm about these green policies. Now, the idea when you look how everything developed in the 2000s, the European Union was a leader in products which had to do with climate change, green wave, the Green Deal later, right? However, now China took over here, no? And we saw that maybe some of these climate change policies are a bit complicated. Maybe this is this part of this regulation which doesn't allow Europe to grow. Okay, so here the idea is to deregulate a little bit, but mostly to look that the Europeans have some kind of support, develop some kind of support for these policies. Because in the last year, we cannot really say that it was there, right? So here, climate change, also a stronger connection with the European people, right? And as I mentioned at the beginning, the new American presidency and the quiet Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, everything is happening in the back, right? And we will see these results of all these policies very soon. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will focus more on Ukraine. So the enlargement process from the other side. But first, thank you for invitation. Thank you for having me here in this spectacular city, in this spectacular building. It's my first time here in Barcelona, but not the last time, I hope. We agreed with the organizers that Adam will, that your intervention will be about the EU. I will complement it with the regional perspective on the enlargement, about Ukraine, which is a newcomer in this business, which is the biggest country in the club of 9 candidates to the EU. And I think this is Ukraine is biggest, is the biggest even if you compare to the rest combined. So this shows us also the challenge that we have. Ukraine formally started its accession path only 15 months ago, when the negotiations were officially opened, and that was during the Spanish presidency in the EU. Ukraine was very fast and used that momentum. President Zelensky and his team submitted application to the EU, I think, on the 6th day of Russian full-scale invasion on Ukraine, when the Russian troops were surrounding Kyiv from 3 sides. And it was really unclear if the Ukrainian capital stand. As the invasion continues for more than 3 years already, we cannot detach these 2 processes, one from another. So EU membership is an integral part of Ukraine's victory. It is perceived so by the majority of the Ukrainians. 80% or even more of the people there are supporting their country accession to the EU, and they are seeing that as an ultimate goal of their fight against the Russians, as a light in the tunnel. But Ukraine's orientation towards the EU is not a new phenomenon. It did not start 15 months ago. 12 years ago, people went out to the streets of Kyiv and other cities to protest against the then President Yanukovych, who resigned during the EU summit in Vilnius to sign Ukraine's association agreement with the EU, and cancelled Ukrainian hopes and dreams for the European, not Russian, future. The revolution of dignity, as those 3 months in 2013 and 14, these 3 months of protests were called, they triggered Russian annexation of the Crimea and military aggression to the Donbass. But it also triggered, or rather enhanced, the process of the Ukrainians' self-emancipation from Russia in all possible regards, in political, economic, military, but first and foremost in terms of national identity. The turn from Ruski Mir, so the Russian world, to Western world, gained new accelerated momentum. Well, historians like to say that no one has done that much for the Ukrainian self-determination and pro-European orientation or pro-Western orientation than Putin attacking Ukraine in 2014 and then invading 8 years later. So a new political nation in Europe was born, demanding a place, or rather a seat, in the institutionalized political Europe, on the western side of Limes. With Donald Trump in power for the last 2 months, bringing new reality, new security context, Ukrainian focus on the EU, or Europe as a whole, gained new momentum and new dimension, the security dimension. We can back to that later. So knowing the context and what's behind Ukraine's strive to Europe, let's see where are in this process of integration of Ukraine to the EU. So the negotiations, they were opened at the end of 2023, in the mid-2024, after the negotiation framework was adopted, the first intergovernmental conference, the so-called ICG, in Brussels was held and formally launching the EU accession negotiations with Ukraine. A so-called screening process across all 33 chapters in 6 clusters, looking at approximation of Ukrainian law to acquis communautaire, has already been going for several months. Ukraine's goal was to focus during the Hungarian presidency on the screening of the cluster number 1, the fundamentals, to open it as quickly as possible during the next presidency, so Polish presidency, which is now. And there have been solid grounds for such a tactic. Hungary has been very unwilling to Ukraine joining the EU and has been missing no opportunity to slow down this process. At the same time, Warsaw is just the opposite. We are very much in favor of Ukraine proceeding on the path of EU integration. We declare readiness and assistance to open even 2 clusters by the end of June. Ukraine, however, has even higher hopes to open 3 clusters during Polish presidency and last 3, so remaining 3, during the next Danish presidency, which is perceived, along with Polish presidency, as the most favorable ones for Ukraine. This is a very ambitious time frame. Ukraine hopes that decisions by the EU, both on the level of the Commission and the level of the member states, will be more politically driven than merit-based due to security situation in Europe after Russian full attack. I don't have a feeling that it can fly in 100%, but we as the EU should be very much attentive and very much helpful and assistant to Europe, to Ukraine, to fully do its part of the job, meaning harmonizing its legal framework to acquis and executing all the compulsory reforms. According to the experts on enlargement, the optimistic horizon of Ukraine's full accession is 2032, 2033. In Kyiv, you can hear that Ukraine could complete this process in 2 years even. But this time frame, I think it does not include implementation. Negotiations on transition periods in market accesses in at least few sectors like agriculture, food, transport, climate, and so on. Those are very sensitive issues for many interest groups in many countries, not only at Ukraine's direct neighbors like in Poland or Romania or Bulgaria, which is not a direct neighbor, but it's quite close. But for example, for France, as we saw that last year. Politicians in respected countries will not be led to overlook these issues by interested parties like farmers or food producers. And this, I think this optimistic time frame do not take into account political dynamics, both within the Commission and in individual member states. We might have change in power in Hungary next years, but at the same time, we might have change in power in France or in Germany. So different parties can take power who are more skeptical to the EU enlargement, and they are becoming stronger and stronger. At the end, very shortly about the nitty-gritty, where we are with the first cluster. So fundamentals, this cluster is very important, not to say the most important one, because it is the first one to be open and the last one to be closed. And I'm bringing that up because since Spain joined the EU and then Poland joined the EU, the methodology of enlargement changed very much. Reforms within the first cluster addressing fundamental issues such as judiciary, fundamental rights, the functioning of democratic institutions and the public administration, public procurement. Those are the priority for the EU in terms of rule of law on the one hand. On the other, these are also the issues that Ukraine has been facing quite many problems in last years. So, however, Ukraine did prepared and did agreed with the Commission 3 roadmaps allowing for opening this first cluster fundamental. The question now is how to persuade some member states of the EU to say yes for that. And I don't have a good answer for that, how to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Because I had a problem with that. It fell. Okay, so thank you to both our experts. As I told you, the full-scale invasion in Ukraine has woken up the dormant enlargement process. And since 2022, the geopolitical dimension of this process has given the enlargement a new momentum. You have explained different details of this momentum. And then, since Trump's arrival to power, EU's future is even more bound together with the Ukrainian fate in front of Russia. So my question would be, but before I would just say something. You know, if we were in Kyiv right now, having this session, or we were in Kyiv sitting with some EU enlargement experts talking about acquis communautaire and how harmonizing different aspects. So then suddenly the alarm will be heard, and we will have to leave everything we have here and go to the shelter. So that is a factor which doesn't help to address in the same way as Spain has done it or Poland has done it, the question of the enlargement and of being a good student to that, to a good pupil. So my question to you is, can enlargement be business as usual in that perspective? Can the Ukrainian people wait until someone has decided that the harmonization of the criteria are good enough? Can they expect wait until 32, 33? Because in Spain and in Poland we didn't have this problem of will we survive? So my question is, can it be business as usual? Please, Adam.
Thank you. Very interesting question. I think there will be no European Union enlargement if a country is at war with another country. We first have to wait until the war will finish, and we don't know when this war will finish, right? If the peace talks right now will be successful, yes or no, and then we have to take a better look. There are surely other aspects, right? There was something like an enlargement fatigue already before that. We have the enlargement fatigue already since the 2010s, right? And here there was the contribution of some member states in Eastern Europe. Now they were saying, okay, maybe we shouldn't take more Eastern European countries because this which we have sometimes makes some kind of problems, right? No, so we had this enlargement fatigue before, and the candidate status for Ukraine and Moldova, this was like a very symbolic. This is symbolic. You fight, you protect your state, right? You fight also some people say that European democracy in that moment, right? So we give you this accession. However, I don't think that's everything but business as usual to answer.
Okay, can you add something, Tadeusz?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that was very nice picture that you made, the alarms in Kyiv, because my experience in Kyiv, and as I'm traveling there quite frequently, despite the war, is that people, both the administration, the state administration, and the experts, very strong third sector community who are very much helpful to the administration in harmonizing, in preparing legislation to be harmonized with the acquis communautaire. They are working in such a condition, so they go to the shelter, but still they keep that.
And they keep working.
And they keep working there. So I think, well, as we spoke, the context is very, very different. So we have to apply different instruments to that. And I very much agree that this EU enlargement should be kind of our strategic response to what Mr. Putin did and to the full-scale aggression. I very much agree with what Mr. Shapiro said, that this is strategic investment in peace. So this is already not a business as usual because, well, what does it mean business as usual? Like we had the accession of Sweden and Finland to NATO after they became the EU member states. It is completely different, and Ukraine would like to follow that path because when it comes to membership in NATO, the perspectives are, let's say, much more gloomy and unclear when it comes to the EU. So Ukraine is really fast in doing all this thing and all this legislation, regulatory work, and this is really outstanding. Yeah, so we are where we are, but we should not, let's say, overlook the situation that this is our strategic investment in peace. So this security dimension of Ukraine's becoming the member of the EU is very much important because this is stabilizing our neighborhood. So Europe will not be safe, will not be secured if there will be some, let's say, regulatory gray zones on our border.
Okay, but then precisely this security dimension, which is what the Ukrainian in this in the current situation is asking for, at least as a guarantee for them to survive as a sovereign state and a state in peace, is the security guarantees in front of the concessions they will have to make, territorial ones, they will have to make to Russia probably. We still do not know, but probably. Do you think that if we speak of this security dimension of the EU enlargement, and besides the fact that the country is in war, but we are not, I mean, we are talking about just the day after, obviously. I mean, during the war, it's, the situation is always out of the normal. But then, can the enlargement of the EU happen without an enlargement of NATO? And you know that it is one of the issues which is very much disputed now, even more so because, or I wouldn't say I would say because of President Trump. So how would you address this problem if there is a NATO at all in some time? So we don't know.
Okay, so you were asking about if the enlargement of Europe...
Decouple EU enlargement from NATO enlargement, or should they go hand to hand? That doesn't mean in the same moment, but the engagement to Ukrainian people in that sense, in that domain.
I think enlargement of NATO is completely out of the table right now, right? Europe is trying to find its own place, and we are really right now in a very complex and perplexed situation, right? Because when the war started, now the United States were directly supporting Ukraine, right? Europe was, some states closer to Russia were supportive, other states, for example, like Germany, they had some issues, right? Germany got this cheap energy from Russia, right? And the whole industry was built on that, right? So there were some states which were resistant. France also were somewhat resistant. We had UK, Poland, which were completely supportive, no? But we had different states like Germany, France, and maybe others, right? Also here, Spain, Portugal, right? Which were, okay, we will support Ukraine, but let's not put too much burden on us, right? Slowly, this conflict, because at the beginning, many people also mentioned that this conflict will come closer to Europe. Right now, we see that it's localized. Now it's even localized there, Donbass. It's not moving forward too much now. Apparently, the Russian army is advancing very slowly, very costly now, but we see it right now like something local. Now, and we'll have to look also at the European war fatigue, right? And the population, if they are really still in favor of give so much support to Ukraine, yes or no, right? And right now, with the new American administration, for that reason I'm saying that this is so complex. So we have leading member states like Germany who were not so much, now they would like this war to finish. Right? And when you look at survey data, the Germans, if Trump would make this war on his conditions, they would say, finally it's over, yeah, we would like to go on, right? Now, so we were following somehow, or most of the states were following the American lead, and right now America withdraws. And Europe stayed completely alone right now, in the support for Ukraine. And on the other hand, we have peace talks. And Europe is completely not there. Europe is not involved in the peace talks. Nobody asks Europe about anything, right? So this moment is quite complicated. And Europe also has to worry if Trump really, if they not, some member states are not investing more In the military, if he withdraws for NATO, I don't think that will happen. However, now he likes this art of the deal. He likes to use this leverage. No? So I think Europe is in a very complicated moment, and we never wanted to be here. Right? Okay, we never wanted to arrive here, and NATO enlargement, I think it's completely
here we are.
Out of my...
Here we are, so we can decide either to do something or not. And by the way, I wouldn't agree that we are talking or witnessing peace talks starting. It's ceasefire talk for the time being. We'll see whether we can talk at some point about peace. But then, okay, what should we do? I mean, we are not invited to the table of this ceasefire because probably we were not, at some point, in some moment, we were not strong enough, or we didn't explain strongly enough that we are indispensable. And that is also to be with what the EU has been, how the EU has been addressing the Russian issue. That is in my opinion. But then what the EU, talking about security dimension, what the EU can propose, if it's not NATO, and I know that NATO is very controversial now, although, by the way, the Ukrainians are very keen to NATO, thanks to Mr. Putin, obviously, as keen to NATO as to the EU. And the Ukrainian population, by the way, before 2014, in spite of all what the Kremlin propaganda says, the Ukrainian population was supporting in the majority the EU rapprochement, not NATO. NATO was something like supported by 20-something, under 30% of the population. But now, thanks to the Russian aggression, it has changed completely. So, if it is not NATO, what can we do in terms of security guarantee for the Ukrainians?
I think there are many ideas floating now in Europe. What can we do? And I think the leaders will be talking about that tomorrow. And today, Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Macron are talking about that. But I would like to refer a little bit to what Adam said and to what you said. Can there be EU enlargement before NATO enlargement? I agree that this is a highly controversial issue, Ukraine being invited or not invited because it is invited since 2008, right, from the Bucharest summit. Yes. So the doors are open, but they cannot, open physically. But accepted, that Ukraine cannot be accepted. Now that there are many ideas floating that perhaps part of Ukraine can be, that Kyiv is controlling effectively could join the NATO. But what I would argue is that still we are in the situation that we have to close the security gap. Because if we will not close the security gap on the eastern border of the EU and NATO, we're gonna have the destabilized situation all over again. So I would say that without Ukraine joining the EU and joining NATO, the war will not be over. Because I don't know how many of you, I'm sure that you, Carmen, did read the Russian ultimatum from December 2021.
Exactly.
But the goal is clear. The Russian goal is clear. That it is not the war about Ukraine. This war is about changing the security architecture. This is about Poland and Central Europe being de facto the buffer zone. This is about kicking the Americans out from Europe and dismantling NATO. So, this is at least our perception in Poland. No matter how controversial it is, but without having Ukraine under Article 5, we will not show our resolve enough to Russia and will not deter Russia enough. This is, I think, maximum what we can do, and we should not be afraid of that.
Yes, absolutely. But then now we have to struggle not only with Mr. Putin, but also with Mr. Trump. And that makes our life and our task very difficult. I would like to know, I mean, precisely when you were talking about how in Poland people feel about Russia and etc. How do you think, Adam, that Poland could use its EU presidency to help other member states, and mainly their citizens, to understand what really is at stake in the current crisis? I mean, even if you are not a neighbor of Russia, why in Spain should we care about it?
Okay, this is a very good question, right? So I think I mentioned that during my talk, it's raising this awareness, right, that there is something like in danger. I think it was all about the news that, for example, all Polish men have to do a military training right now, right? This is something similar, what I was talking about, this rescue package at home, right, in case of war, right, to that people start switching a little bit, right, showing there is some kind of danger. But one thing which is very important, and for example, well, many people think that Poland supports something like this European security structures, and it is doing that, but Poland would never give up NATO protection, for example, right? NATO protection, it's the protection which Poland sees as necessary. Why? Because it's also not so easy to build up this European security infrastructure. The strongest army in the European Union before Brexit was the UK, which is also interesting. UK is relevant now because we were also asking what can we do that the Americans take it seriously. UK was always on the side of the United States, and they are also not invited. So apparently we cannot do anything. Yes, it's a different moment. If UK is not invited with all what they did in the last decades, they were on their sides, right? Canada was on their side. They are not there. This is a paradox moment, right? But Poland, we never give it up, right? So we should try to build up this security structure in Europe. However, also try to re-engage the United States. And how can we do it? By raising defense spending. And when we look, for example, at Spain, is Spain ready to raise the spending on defense? There is a clear no, right? Nobody cares about the war, right? And Spain has a lot of problems right now because it is so far. More money of spending means more cuts somewhere else,
well,
right?
There have been, excuse me to interrupt, but there have been public opinion polls recently in Spain. And it seems that quite a large majority understands and seems ready to favor to increase the defense spending.
But the defense spending right now from Spain, I think, is around 1%, right?
Well,
going back to 3, it would be billions of euro, and I don't think society is ready for that.
It is from law, but it doesn't matter. For the time being, they're supporting an increase. At least they're saying that they understand why it should be increased.
Yeah.
Tadeusz, do you have something more? Because it's not only, you tell me. And
well, it will be pretty hard for me to tell you how this is playing out in in Spain. But use? I agree that with Donald Trump in power, it is not easier than it was. And this situation is really influencing our security, because we know what is happening and what are all the discussions or the key discussions in Europe now. This is about the security, about raising the defense spendings, about about military industry to be more developed and so on. I think that what we are missing sometimes in our discussions, it is the fact that within the EU we have the clause, which is the Article 42.7 the Treaty of the European Union, which is something like Article 5. We are not discussing that, but perhaps we'll have to discuss that if, in the worst case scenario, this transatlantic bond and this sense of solidarity will be put up under question mark. And I think this is what Russia will be doing. Russia will be testing both the Article 5 and transatlantic unity. I think that threat perception, this is the key issue. Like, we are, like, Spain and Poland were on the different sides of the EU and of the continent. And what we, like the Russian aggression on Ukraine, for Poland, this is an existential threat. This is not only the threat for Ukraine, but this is the threat on us, because we are bordering Ukraine, we are bordering Belarus, which is de facto co-aggressor and Russian proxy in that war, and we are bordering very Russia, which is the Kruleviec Kaliningrad Oblast. So we feel that very much, and we have been feeling that from the first days of our of Russian invasion, with millions of Ukrainians coming to Poland, and with the huge military support from Poland to Ukraine. So here I think the situation is different, because you were not experiencing in your history aggressive Russia, at least militarily, because the Russian hybrid deeds and operations probably are here as well. So this is all the question of solidarity, and to what extent we will be sincere, and we will be aligning with the commitments that we took within NATO and in the framework of the EU.
Well, yes, I would agree with that, but there is another argument I think that we could use, which is that for Spain, I mean for Southern Europeans, we do not have this, obviously, this feeling of existential threat. That's clear. Yesterday, a friend of mine was telling me, Carmen, about this survival kit. Is it for I mean, is it serious? Do we need to do well? So there is not this feeling. But besides the solidarity mechanism, which is, I think, very important, because also for Spain, the solidarity is a value which has been historically important. But there is another argument that I would use, which is now, I mean, no country in the world, but no country in the European Union is living in a bubble. So if there is some crisis, military crisis situation with any of the member states of the EU, that will change completely, obviously, the internal dynamic of the EU itself and the environment, etc. So if that is in danger, don't we want, and we are part of the EU, don't we want to fight for the kind of EU we want, stable and in peace, and that means fighting the threat of Russia, and not only thinking that it is a problem of the Russian neighbors or whether you are closer to it or not.
Can I add
Sure.
one thing? Because we
You have a speaker.
I will not keep the secret that we had a talk with Carmen
Yes,
before. Because I was really interested in how this war is playing out here in Spain, because this is the context that I am not observing on the everyday basis and so on. But what came to my mind is also the fact that as we speak here and as the politicians the EU politicians are talking about security, so now security is a very top issue because of Russia, because of Trump. So if Spain, as a big country, top 5 in terms of demography, in terms of GDP and so on, would like to keep this position and would like to embolden this position within the EU, it has to show resolve. It cannot stay aside from that discussions and from security spendings and security and military industry.
Okay, thank you to both of you. Now I think it's time to open the floor to the audience. Please feel free to raise your hand and put questions. The students of Adam have nothing to ask to them. Well, big silence, eh? Either we convince them, or...
No one is interested in Trump and
sure,
negotiations.
Mr. President.
Una pregunta un poco provocativa. ¿Podríamos imaginar una OTAN sin Estados Unidos?
Could we imagine a NATO without the United States?
Yeah.
Now I am starting that this time. Okay, Tadeusz, for you.
That's a tough one. Well, I'm not a military expert, but I'm not an expert on security. But of course, well, I think as an institution we can imagine, but it will be a completely different institution, and it will be split, and it will and what is, at least in my opinion, what is the most important is the fact that it will not have these capabilities that the US were providing, because even if, as we see with Ukraine will not survive without military supplies and from the US. We don't have these capabilities. We cannot defend ourselves vis-à-vis Russia without the US, without this umbrella. We have been for long very much asleep. We're functioning in that paradigm of end of history, this famous essay of Francis Fukuyama. So I would say that formally NATO will exist still, but the capabilities and the real response will be very, very weakened.
Thank you. We have a question over there.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you both. It was a very interesting talk. I would like to ask that we've heard in these days that maybe the solution was not to spend more in defense, but to spend better and better coordination. Which chance is there that the member states coordinate and which response could they give in order to increase or to improve the European defense, and would it be possible that, also in which sense would it be possible that it would become an alternative to NATO?
Okay. Adam, I forgot to give you the floor.
No problem.
So you can answer the two questions.
Okay, thank you, Luca. Very interesting question. When we look at the capacities of the European Union, there are somehow mixed information. I don't know if you have the same feeling. Now, for example, when some European member states should provide weapons to Ukraine, we found out that, for example, some tanks are not working, the equipment is old. We saw it here in Spain, we saw it in Germany, right? But then you look at the total numbers, and even without the United States, right, we have so much equipment that we will be much stronger than Russia. Right? For example, when you sum everything together, and Canada, the States in, and UK, and so on, right? On the other hand, we have 1.5 million of Russian soldiers, right? We have this Russian war machine going on, no? And I think what you said is very important. Right now, it's very dangerous to attack this NATO, right? Because this NATO is much too strong. But if the NATO would be without the US, maybe someone would try now to play a little bit with that. Much more than Putin is playing right now. Now Putin is still testing, but he knows he cannot test too much. With a NATO without the United States, I think there will be many more tests.
And about coordination, whether it is not so much about having more.
I think there should be more spending, not only better spending. I don't think there is good spending now. However, the question right now, and this is a very good question, we have the Next Generation Fund, right? This COVID fund, we see it everywhere in Barcelona. Most of the works on the streets are paid somehow, right, with European money right now. So it's a very important boost now. And right now we have these talks if we should do another packet of debt, common European debt, right, for security spending. And I think this is very relevant, no? Because we cannot look all the time to Washington and think, yeah, how did he wake up today? Yes, what will he say today, right? We have to stand on our own. And for that reason, we need much more investment. Because it's not so that we, for example, imagine that, I think this will happen in the future. Right? We will have this common debt, I don't know which amount of money, and then we want to buy weapons. Right? First you have to produce these weapons, and this is a very, very long process. Yeah. Right? You can buy them from Korea, but Poland already bought more or less everything from Korea. So there is also nothing left. So we buy it from the United States again. And you see the talks, right? For example, when you buy these very high-level airplanes, maybe if the Americans say, yeah, we can switch them off. Right? So we have to build up a military defense, but this takes a lot of time. So better spending, but also more spending, maybe both.
Yeah, I think both. But I think this is very much the question of the political will in every single country. And this is also it's about this threat perception, right? Poland is, as I said, this is an existential threat. So we are spending 5% of GDP for security and defense. You are spending like 1.5, more or less, because you are far away and you don't have someone that could attack you, basically, right? But again, we are in two blocks, like we're in the EU and we are in NATO. So this is basically the question of the political will and the question of, are we ready to give up the way we were functioning before? Because we have to allocate more money for military and defense sectors. Agree with Adam that Eurobonds, this is an option, right? So there was a precedent. Of course, there are countries that are very strict in terms of fiscal policy and wouldn't like to go for debt, but we had that precedent during COVID times, and my understanding is that we are at least starting this discussion now, because there is this Rearm Europe program, and part of that it is there are at least ideas for a common for Eurobonds. We have frozen assets. Russian frozen assets. It's more than 2 billion euro, only in Belgium. Again, this is the political will. Can we confiscate them, or shall we be keeping it frozen? just small remark about what you said and what you said, and what we were discussing before about NATO without US and the capabilities. I think it was last month or 2 months ago there was an information that when the US put on hold this intelligence sharing with Ukraine and put on hold the military supplies, it became evident that Ukraine was receiving this long-range missiles from the US, but also from France and from the UK, this Storm Shadow missiles. So it came out that those missiles, they cannot fly without American intelligence and American software. So it is showcasing us how this is all combined and how big was and how, fundamental was American contribution, I said was, still is, to NATO.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Because there is another factor, which is a time factor, because we have no time left. The gentleman over there?
Very interesting discussion here. Very interesting discussion here. My colleagues and I have often discussed, ever since the occupation of Crimea, the question of how far Europe should become involved. Many of my colleagues were reticent about involvement, but I always referred them to what happened here in Spain when the democratic countries, particularly the United Kingdom and France, refused to provide aid for the democratically elected Spanish government. And I always go back to that idea. So, and very often I'm fairly convincing in that sense. Regarding the amount of money we have available, I mean, we can print as many euros we want. That's the advantage that the dollar has and the US has. So we can become very much indebted as long as the European member states wish to go that far with the European Central Bank. The 800 billion that have been offered, 150 billion is in fact money. So that can be distributed. And we have to think in Keynesian terms here, which is that all this money will dynamite the problems that, for example, Germany has now with their industrial base, where Volkswagen Group have to close 4 factories. And if you retool and you reschedule investments towards the defense industry, for example, in Rheinmetall, then you'll be able to change the dynamics completely of the European. Many economists are saying that this is an opportunity for the European Union to become much stronger economically, where the United States may be receding in the near future at least. And one further point, which is that, of course, this dynamic would in fact increase tax take for the European member states. If you increase productivity and production, you will be able to increase your tax take, and so you will be. It will be easier to repay those bonds or whatever form of debt you have assumed.
Okay. Do you want? I mean, there is no direct question, but
fully subscribed.
Yes.
Excellent comment. Yeah.
I think we are all in agreement.
Maybe one more thing. We are in a moment of change. The European Union, some of the parties, like the Green Party, the leftist parties, even some social democratic parties, socialist parties, were always against this military complex, right? They were thinking the time of war is over. The same thing happens right now here in Spain. Right now we have a coalition government with one part of the government which someone always had some kind of nostalgia to Russia and were a pacifist party, right? So against war. it's very costly for these actors, right, to change the idea. But when we see the talks right now in Spain, the far left is always screaming, yeah, why do you want militarize Europe? No? So there is completely misunderstanding on the whole situation, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it will take time and it takes work. It was always very cool, right, to be against war. 68 period when we had the US protection, but this is gone, at least for now, right? And let's see what happens in 3 years and 10 months, right?
Sorry, I'm 68 generation, so respect. I agree very much with you and with the first argument, absolutely, because I am product of the Spanish Republican exile, so I do know, I do know what it is. And this idea that if France and Great Britain would have helped the Spanish Republic, then maybe we would have another life. So, okay, is there any other question? Oh, yes, 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 yes.
Getting more.
Please, the lady, yes, you, and then over there. And then here, yes, please.
Hi, thank you very much both for your intervention. I think that it's really interesting. My question is more for Dr. Holesch, that he said that increasing the defense here in Spain, how we spend it, it's really difficult. And I would like to know how could we do it better and also spending more like that European Union said that we have to arrange. And also that questions interest me to a second question that right now what is more important, the welfare state and the democracy or the hypothetical world that could we be in a few years or few months that we don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we take another question? So the gentleman over there, yes. Allá, un poco más allá. Ahí.
Yes, following to the comment of the gentleman in front of me about the money, assuming the money issue is...
No podemos escuchar bien. We cannot hear properly, do you? The microphone.
Assuming the money issue is solved, okay, do you envision, at least in Spain, I don't know, in Poland, the capability of our society to mobilize our youth, like we saw in Second World War? Because this is going to be, at the end, people in the ground. America has a big army, a lot of people. European armies are very, very small. You said it before, we don't have equipment, we don't have ammunition, we don't have intelligence, we don't have communications to guide the satellites and the missiles. But eventually, given all this solved, it's going to be an issue of people in the ground. Do you envision, I don't know, in Poland your army is big enough? Personally, I don't see a capability of mobilizing the citizens of Europe to defend Ukraine, to defend Poland, or to defend anything. What's your view about that?
Okay, I think we take these two ones and then you will have the last questions. Okay?
That's not the question. I think it was rather a statement.
Yes, it was more a statement.
Said one,
but okay, but there was a question here about whether we have to choose, if I understood, between welfare and democracy or war. I think there is no choice here. It goes together, but I mean it's.
Yeah, I think your question was, can we maintain the welfare state, right?
Can we maintain it?
When we have to raise the defense spending. And here the idea is, will we get the euro bonds, yes or no? If we get the euro bonds, maybe we can maintain the welfare state. If it has to be paid by the national budget, we cannot maintain the welfare state. And then the whole discussion will start, right? So it's not that there is something like a mainstream position all over Europe, right? All over all party groups. We have the mainstream parties which somehow are willing to spend a little bit more, but on the far right and on the far left, now this is a moment of politicization, right? We have actors which want to take advantage of it, right? In that moment when you start cutting the welfare state, the far left, for example, in Spain, or maybe even the far right, no, the far right is not very clear here, right, would raise, because people would be against this policy, right? Democracy and spending, this is also a very interesting question, right? Because Ukraine is always saying that they defend European democracy, right? And here you have to see if you believe this argument, yes or no, right? Because in Poland, for example, people believe that you defend democracy. The far away, you would say, yeah. The idea is, in other space, not that Putin will stop in Ukraine, right? But it will not move forward. So for that reason, it will not influence democracy. But there is one very important thing, right? And let's leave the United States apart. We are under some kind of proxy attack from Russia permanently. Now we saw it in the elections for the presidency in Romania, right? Even if there is somehow a little bit complicated, the connection of the Secret Service and Russian influence, we have seen it in many other elections, right, where the Russians put fake news apparently, and this is every time more confirmed, for example, by I think the Czech government was it, no, there are some like attacks, no, some fires, right? So there is something already going on there, right? Russia is not happy that we provide weapons to Ukraine. Depends how you define war, but you could also define we are already in a proxy war, right? Because if you give them weapons, no, right, it's you are part of the conflict. It's not that nobody's part of the conflict. Also a very interesting question, but let's see if we get the Eurobonds, because if we don't get the Eurobonds, this will be a very complicated moment, I think.
Yes, as long as we, all EU members, except of course Hungary in that moment, unless we all are on the position of not accepting Russia's terms, or not only on Ukraine, but only on what they want us to be. We should not ever forget that. As long as it will be like this, we will be a target of Russia. Even here in Spain, down to Malaga, we will be a target of Russia. Please, there was a question over there, and I think that will be the last one. Yes. It's coming, just a second.
Thank you very much for your respective insights. I had a short personal comment and a question as well. You mentioned, all of you, the preparedness strategy that we adopted at the European Commission that was presented by the President of the Commission recently. And I think in relation to this, we should not underestimate, and it was apparent in your intervention, the psychological dimension of the geopolitical tectonic paradigm shift that we're living right now, be it on the eastern border or actually in the West with the US. And in relation to this, when you're losing someone or something in the process of mourning, it seems to me as much as we have a first denial phase as per the security threat for the entire continent that represent what is currently happening in Ukraine, for other countries such as Spain, there has been a denial both at political and also at civil society and societal level as well. I wanted to ask you, is there a denial also phase in Poland as per the end of the reliability of the US as per a security guarantor for the entire continent? How is the elite and the public opinion reacting to this possibility? Because of course it's an option, but it's an option that we cannot discard.
Tadeusz, please.
Well, first, of course, there is a sense of instability. That's for sure. And, if you go through the Twitter, because Polish politics is mainly on Twitter or X, then you will see what is posting. So, of course, we have to be, as Adam said, and I very much agree, that Poland has always been very much up to this strong transatlantic bond and relations and cooperation with the US. If US is out of that, then we have really, really big problem. So there is a lot of concern among the political elites and also among the society that if this bond will be somehow disrupted, then I wouldn't say that we are doomed, but basically we are facing Russia without the US. So this is why we have, the idea was before Trump became the president, but there is the reason why our presidency is about security Europe, because this is the key. And this is the reason why Polish Prime Minister and Poland is so active in Europe for advocating for actions vis-à-vis Russian aggression, because I completely agree that if we accept Russian demands, then we're going to have the war. This is not a question if, this is the question when. Because in Russia, this is about what Russia is in this mode, this war mode. And I cannot imagine the situation that if we gonna have a bad deal in Ukraine, then Putin will demobilize 1.5 million people to their homes and to civilian life. I cannot imagine. And his goals are not fulfilled because his goals were stated in December 2021. So we are very much concerned, and I think there is a consensus, no matter whether this is like Liberal Party, Right Party, Socialist Party, whatever. I think this is an existential threat, and we know that we are very much dependent on the US. So that's why we are so active, and we are developing the cooperation within the coalition of willing, the like-minded countries. So we are very much to the north, to cooperate with the Baltics, to cooperate with the Nordic states, to cooperate with the Czech Republic. So basically, if in last decades we are very much about the Visegrad 4, now we are very much to the north, to the Nordics and to the Baltics, plus Romania, plus the UK.
Thank you, Tadeusz. Adam?
I completely agree, Tadeusz.
They are in agreement. So I think we can stop here. Oh, sorry, there is one more question. I said it was the last one, but okay. Let's do this one, and then we are finishing. Please, just wait for the microphone. Sí, pero la intérprete te tiene que escuchar, y para eso te tiene que oír.
Gracias. Bueno, primero de todo, gracias por...
Un momentito, ok, ahora.
Perfecto, pues gracias por compartirnos vuestros pensamientos. Primero de todo, quería haber preguntado sobre cuáles eran vuestras opiniones sobre qué opinaban los partidos políticos sobre la paz, sobre cómo podríamos llegar a la paz en la Unión Europea. Pero creo que Tadeusz ya me ha podido contestar hace un rato, entonces la he reformulado porque me ha parecido que nos ha dado mucha importancia a las influencias que ha habido de Elon Musk y de Donald Trump. Sí que las han mencionado al principio, pero ahora en la ponencia no, o las influencias chinas en comparación al poder que ha tenido Rusia. Y me parece que es totalmente incomparable. Además de que se están llegando, me ha parecido, en este debate a unas conclusiones un tanto demasiado belicistas, bajo mi punto de vista, en el que quizás había unos posibles intereses industriales o económicos que no deberían pertenecer a un punto de vista que fuera positivo para la Unión Europea, al menos desde un punto de vista objetivamente hablando de lo que es un ataque a la que no es ni forma parte de la integridad de la Unión Europea contra los intereses económicos que ésta siempre ha representado.
Vale, gracias, porque es que estamos ahora ya un poco fuera de tiempo. Adam,
¿puedo responder? Pues tu contrapropuesta es no hacer nada y esperar si quizás no hay ningún peligro de parte de Rusia.
Fortalecerse económicamente y esperar, sí. Porque es que
quizás sigue
mientras tanto los
quizás
ucranianos
sigue con la guerra, quizás no sigue, pero creo que la Unión Europea tiene. Aquí nadie argumentaba a favor de la guerra, creo que eso es entendido completamente mal. Aquí se argumentaba a favor de invertir en una protección militar para que no tenemos que defender de Estados Unidos, pero nadie ha dicho que tenemos que atacar a Rusia o de alguna manera. Solamente ser capaces de defenderse si perdemos la protección americana, porque ahora mismo podemos hablar de algunas cosas porque Estados Unidos nos han protegido durante la Guerra Fría, ¿no? Y esto es una parte muy importante que no podemos olvidar.
Se trata no de ir a la guerra contra Rusia, se trata de estar en condiciones para defender lo que consideramos que ha de ser defendido, entre otros nuestros valores, no solo nuestras industrias y nuestros intereses económicos, que también, porque son los que dan garantizan nuestro nivel de vida, además y nuestro estado de bienestar. Sino que tenemos que plantar cara a Rusia, porque si no, no nos tienen en cuenta y no nos toman en serio. No nos toman en serio, solo entienden el uso de la fuerza porque eso les da poder. Si tú no usas la fuerza, no eres poderoso y por consiguiente no eres alguien a quien ellos tengan que temer o sencillamente respetar.
I couldn't agree more with your last word.
Thank you. Pues aquí acabamos. Muchísimas gracias por todo.